Yo, how's it going, folks? Welcome to episode 174 of the Simpa Life Podcast. How are you doing, you beautiful people? We are getting deep into spring. Today's a bit minging in the north. It is very rainy. However, I am very happy for it because the £1,000 plus with the plants that I've put in Albert Green over the past month will get very fed and very watered and happy. So they'll get well established. Albert Green, got a couple of bits of news that I can actually now tell you. I know I've been teasing this for a few weeks. My legal team, pro bono legal team from London, part of an international law firm, represented it in, I think, 18 different cities around the world. They have allocated 4 different lawyers from different fields to create a pro bono team for me. And we have now approached Durham County Council. We are giving them, as of recording of this, I guess we're down to about 10 days for them to respond, for them to formally pause the sale of the land and to instigate and initiate conversations and communications with us without prejudice and without exclusion. So, hopefully, by the time you hear me again on the next episode of this podcast, I'll have some even more good news to share with you. Obviously, we've got 420 coming up. In fact, today is 420 when this is released. So, happy 420, guys. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll be taking my first day off of the year, having hopefully, fingers crossed, had a successful, it might be, dry 420 in Durham tomorrow. So, whatever you get up to, I hope you have a beautiful time doing it. Let's chuck over to introducing today's guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves for once. So they are Clark French and Michaela Maselkova.
Yes.
But, yeah, we'll take that.
Very good.
Who wants to introduce themselves first?
Clark, go for it.
No, ladies first.
Wow, good old times. Hello, everybody. My name is Michaela Maselkova, and I'm a freelance videographer and documentary filmmaker. And I'm the director, DOP, and editor of the upcoming documentary series called Skunk Docu-Series.
Series?
Ooh. Teasing.
Okay.
That might be a first. I think that's first time that's been said, actually. So there you go, exclusive on the Simpa News podcast. I'm Clark French. I am a MS patient and medicinal cannabis campaigner. I've worked with groups such as United Kingdom Cannabis Social Clubs, Normal UK, and I founded the group United Patients Alliance. And I try to raise awareness of the benefits of medicinal cannabis.
Excellent. Obviously, you can refer you guys back to 4 years ago now, Clark, when we sat down to have an episode. If you wanted to get a bit more of a background on Clark, it's Michaela's first time on the Simpa Life, and we will be doing a future episode focusing more on the UPA with potentially some other members of the UPA team as well. So we're not really going to cover that in this episode, guys. I just wanted to kind of get that up front in case you guys are going, well, why are you not talking about UPA? We're solely focusing on the Skunk, series? Do you mean series is it multiple releases are we talking about here?
We're talking about perhaps small, short episodes, several episodes where we will be uncovering this subject that we've been, researching and uncovering for 4 years now, I believe, and it might be 5 years until we edit it. But yeah, instead of publishing 1 hour or 2 hour long documentary film, we made that decision quite recently, actually, to sort of split it into separate little episodes to make it more digestible for the audience and for us as editors as well, and to probably adapt to the standards of the industry a little bit. We see increasing amount of documentaries being made, and we're not trying to abandon the traditional craft of documentary, but I guess with subjects like this that are so information heavy, it'll just be way more digestible and more accessible to people. And that's what we want. We want people to just access it so easily and to gain the information that we've collected for you guys. So I think that was the main reason why we did that. And very exciting. I've never worked on series before. So for me, this is going to be a great challenge. And just like a new experience as a documentarian for sure.
Interesting. I suppose, it's more like chapters in a book then. It's the overall narrative, but it allows you to structure it rather than telling the emotive story or having to anchor it in a traditional structure of a documentary. You can kind of go, well, here's all the negative cases, positive cases, here's the academics, here's the da-da, here's the da-da. And I suppose as well for people that are interested in the subject, but maybe only from one or two parts, can take little bits, and hopefully from that little bit that they may agree with or have a proclivity towards, they may then have an interest and appetite to want to go into the other episodes. It's obviously a lot more streamer friendly as well for distributors in the modern sort of era. So yeah, I can understand that.
Spot on, Simpa. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Sometimes I'm astute.
Yeah, should be part of the crew.
Before we kind of go on to sort of the chronology of all of this, something we kind of quickly touched on the preamble there. Obviously, you can tell I haven't really been on the internet. I've been stuck in the garden. We've got dirt under my fingernails. Different garden, folks, not the indoor ones, allegedly. The name change. So initially it was Skunk Madness. It's now Skunk. Is it Skunk Documentary, or is it literally just the word skunk? Can you sort of elaborate on sort of the name change and sort of the reasoning behind that?
Clark?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first had the vision of what this documentary is and how we would go about it, I was very much coming from a cannabis campaigner's angle. You know, of course, what other angle would I come from? Because that's my experience in life. So for me, the term skunk madness was about a play on words about how the situation is clearly madness, and also a little nod to reefer madness, the 1930s American dramatization of how terrible cannabis is. So I understood that because I was a cannabis campaigner, right? But when we took the documentary out to the public and we started speaking to other people, they didn't get that at all. And it turned out that we were unintentionally implying that the people that have had a negative experience with cannabis are all mad. And that's not a very kind way to discuss people with mental health issues. And that was a huge barrier to allowing the people that have had that negative experience to being involved in the documentary. So we realized that needed to change. And we actually did a vote in the United Patients Alliance group. I think there was about 800 votes on that, and it was decided with all the patients, yeah, we should change it, and we should just call it skunk, because that said everything. You don't need the madness. If you know, skunk implies all of the things that you want to imply from that anyway, without needing that additional term that was actually harming the documentary's potential for even being made. So we were like, well, if it has to change for the good of the documentary, it has to change.
The thing that flashed in my brain there was, we're going back to Simpsons as we always do, Lionel Hutz, attorney at law from The Simpsons, and he has his business card, and he's like, oh no, this is all screwed up, and he puts in a comma and a question mark. That if it was skunk, comma, madness, question mark? Like, there's also a question sort of within it that you're asking. It's hilarious to me that, given the conversations you and I have had in the past, the 173 other episodes of this podcast where I always argue about, and we argue and discuss language and the nuance of interpretation of verbiage, that's the thing. It's ever present within it. If you were to do a series, as in not just the standalone series of this, but a follow-up, Skunk Madness would be a brilliant exploration into propaganda around cannabis, just as an idea there, because then it is exactly as you were alluding to, playing on that reefer madness kind of element to it. And I can entirely understand people's connotations to it. The English language has become ever more loaded in this polarizing space that we live in. So clarity like that, I think, is important. So... yeah, I approve, and thank you for clarifying for posterity, as it were. So, how did you first conceive of the documentary? Michaela was saying there, sort of, it's going to be close to 5 years since conception. So that's putting us back to, we are on lockdown, 21?
Actually, conception is before that. I had the idea in 2017, after a Sky News interview that I went on, And the majority of the people at the Sky News team were like very supportive of me accessing my medicine, apart from one person who said, well, what about people with psychosis and schizophrenia? You having your medicine could harm them. So I was just thinking about it. I was like, hang on a minute. And then I thought about the amount of different times that I've been on some form of platform trying to discuss how beneficial cannabis is to my MS or for the group of patients I work with. And then that's always used as like a counter argument. Like Peter Hitchens, for example, will always use stuff like that to say, well, no, you shouldn't, and it's all Daily Mail headlines and everything. So I thought, well, is there more to this? Firstly, I didn't actually believe that these people existed at first, if I'm honest, if I'm 100% honest. I thought that was all made up to justify the prohibition of cannabis, and it was all like complete rubbish, and it was just a blame for some other reason why people have had mental health issues or had negative consequences in their life. But I was like, well, let's make a documentary about it and let's try and find these people. And yeah, by finding them, I realized, I guess maybe my experience isn't everybody's experience, and maybe the majority of experience is positive, and I don't doubt that at all. But maybe if I was to not listen to the people when they said to me, actually, this has had a negative impact on my life, doesn't that make me just as bad as the people that wouldn't listen to us when we were telling them, hey, this is helping us, this is medicine, and they're saying, no, you're a criminal? Like, I didn't want to do the same thing to them. So that's kind of where it came from. I think we actually, the first ever filming was in California in 2017, but then I had to seek funds to continue recording. And then the lockdown happened and everything. And then we came out of lockdown, and I managed to convince Stores and Bickle to sponsor the documentary so that I could get the camera and that I could essentially make it. And then Michaela came on board, essentially.
Mm.
Wow. Sorry, I was just looking up something as a comparative point, and it's just kind of blown my fucking mind. I was just about to say nothing enjoyable is ever truly safe, and I was like, sex, the number of people that die during sex. Deaths during sexual activity in the UK are extremely rare, but approximately account for 0.6% of all sudden deaths. Nearly 1% of sudden deaths, rounding up, in the UK is due to sexual activity. That's
Why are you looking this up now?
Because I was going to talk about alcohol, and I didn't want to just do the classic alcohol versus dinner. So I was thinking, okay, something pleasurable that humans engage in and interact with. So yeah, like as you were saying, because Clark said he believed that at one point that these people didn't exist. That because I enjoy cannabis, it's good for me. It's supposed to be good for everybody, and we have that blindness in all of us. It's part of the human condition. Part of the Jiminy Cricket of our conscience that's supposed to be there is to remind us to go, yeah, you might be having fun, but this dude, that guy, her over there, there's people everywhere that are not in your vision, in your periphery, that you understand the complex and nuanced impacts of your actions on. So yeah, but that just overwhelmed me when I looked at it. It was nearly rounding up 1% of annual deaths. But yeah, like alcohol, for example, this has always been my counter argument to the prohibitionists. Has been alcohol. We claim no medicinal value. You look at it as a Schedule 1 carcinogen. It's comorbid in half a dozen to a dozen different cancer forms or different types of cancer. Related to liver toxicity, heart problems, to degenerative and neurological conditions that I could list and list and list. Yet we, as in cannabis consumers, go, well, you choose to do that. Others can choose to engage in that behavior. We have then a regulated market to go, okay, they're going to choose to do it. Let's create the safest product available. So that was always the argument, to then create a regulated market. But you still have them within that, as we were seeing by the recent case of Oliver Robinson, complex nuances that are occurring. And we're still page one of the totem of cannabis knowledge, and we're acting like we're gods. We need a hell of a lot more humility to understand what it is we're playing with, that even in the models, within those margins, you'll never get it down to like up to 99, 100% safe. It can't be. No product is. I mean, it's counted to the same thing that happened to Clark when I was on a Victoria Derbyshire show talking about LSD when we were in studio, and she tried to have a got you question, and I got lucky when they were changing cameras and doing the lineup. I got to see a little thing, and I was like, don't. And so she asked, like, what about the impacts of human trafficking and da-da-da, and I listed off all these hellish things associated with drugs. And I went, that's prohibition. That is not a consequence of drug consumers. That is a consequence of an unregulated market. She then tried to re-ask the question again. I verbatim repeated my answer, and they just cut to the next segment. Like, they need this in terms of the media, that it be this binary. It's almost like the BBC paradox. If then something exists, they need to create this thing, but then the more good a thing, the more bad they need to account it to be. So yes, there are people that have these issues, and where they can be devastating to that individual. And this isn't to dismiss that, but we need to proportionalize that with the percentage of the population. So as the World Health Organization says, it goes up and down dependent on the substance, but on an average, 90-10. 90% of all drug consumers do so non-problematically. 10%, yeah. And if you were to then take away criminal elements from that, that would go down to an even smaller amount. If we were to then be able to regulate and remove things from the prohibitive supply of cannabis that are being used as growth additives, PGRs, all sorts of horror stories that I've heard over the years about large productions of, unscrupulous individuals, that they can have major consequences. People using things like glyphosates on cannabis. There's aspergillosis. One of its main symptoms of getting the molds into your lungs is psychosis. We're trying to understand these things and map it, and I'm worried. And sorry, I will throw over to a question in a second here.
No, keep going.
With recent developments, the CQC coming in, and with going to be like movements from various entities, I'm not going to name at this point, but I can very much believe who I think is behind them. Like data acquisition at the minute is moving towards an adult market. They're going to abandon the medical market or reduce it, and a lot of the big players will move over because that's where the cash cow is. And we're going to be left in this space where they're going to go, well, no mental health prescribing, no floral prescribing. And all of a sudden, those people that are getting this benefit, the self-reports like Cannabis Health Magazine did, etc., compared to then the official data sets, we're having big problems with this. I mean, the Lancet report that came out was bastardized. I think it was 56 studies, hand-selected studies. And even that still came back and said, actually, in quite a lot of neurological conditions, cannabis could be effective. We just don't seem to understand the relationship. We don't even still understand at this point dreams, how the brain works within that. We can monitor it. Talk to an anesthesiologist. They're the closest thing a doctor gets to God because they don't understand how the shit that works. They can get the math on it and they can do it, but they don't know how it puts you to sleep and how it brings you back out. So something as powerful as cannabis in its natural form with hundreds of these compounds, yeah, there's going to be these comorbid interactions, and we need that humility. And so I think it's a really good thing that is have recognized early on that this could have ended up being, countering propaganda with propaganda. So I'm curious and interested to hear and to see more than anything sort of the stories and the way you've kind of constructed it.
Yeah.
Feel free to rebut or to discuss anything I've mentioned there. I didn't realize how much of a pontification that was.
No, I think this is a great link to maybe the part when I stepped in, and it feels really synchronistic because, Clark gave birth to the initial idea and the concept, and that was shown to a former executive producer who we don't have to name necessarily, but that person said that just don't make a propaganda film because maybe that's not going to achieve the thing you really want to achieve here. And at that time, I showed up and well, my background is in journalism, ironically, or multimedia journalism. And when I joined the team, I was still studying documentary filmmaking. So I'm this like fresh, curious, very passionate sort of documentary filmmaker. And I've been sort of understanding for some time that to hold polarity and understand nuance in everything is going to be my purpose in life through different projects and different, things I'll embark on in the future. But there's been always this curiosity about polarities, contradictory views, and let's call them sort of controversial subjects because cannabis it is controversial and it is something that sort of splits people, or it creates some sort of, I don't know, maybe tension. I don't know. It makes us feel something like we don't know how to really feel about it. It's such a taboo, and there is so much about it that we can talk about. And I've always found these types of stories just so fascinating. So this was a perfect project to enter and to start my career, if you will. And I'm so grateful to Clark and Oli Genbash, who was the producer. Product. What was his role? He had the role. Okay. What do you want to say, Clark? Product manager, whatever, production manager, something. All he had the role. And so he sort of brought me, it was a very important role. So he sort of brought me in, and I'm really grateful for that because, that sort of started my career. And so me joining the team, I think allowed Clark and everyone involved to sort of understand that, okay, we have to open up and we have to understand that there might be a contradictory experience to ours, and we have to be open to listen and receive that, and that doesn't have to jeopardize or cancel out my experience. It's just a fact that there are multiple truths and there might be multiple experiences, and I think that is what gave this film sort of, the purpose. I think that makes this project more purposeful. And it's also beautiful to watch Clark change, because at the beginning he was this passionate campaigner. He was radical in his views. And just to clarify, I think there is a huge value in this. I think we need people who are radical, who are passionate, who are convinced about their truths, and they are going to fight for it. These types of people or these archetypes have made the biggest changes in the world. Like, we need people who are going to fight. Like you, Simpa. I see the value in people like that. I'm not that person. I think my path will be about holding space for multiple things and for bridging different contradictory points. I think this is how I want to contribute to this world. And I think this film wanted to be that too. There are documentaries that, can be about, campaigning. They can be part of a campaign. There is nothing wrong about being biased in documentary filmmaking, but I think it was increasingly clear that this film doesn't want to do that. This film wants to explore multiple truths and multiple stories. And to be able to do that, you have to take that campaigner radical hat off and put maybe more journalistic hat on and actually, want to hold that nuance and explore contradictory views. And watching Clark doing that was really beautiful and really interesting. And he really softened. And I hope this film or this series will show that, this sort of character development, that from someone who was really radical and passionate, you can see you can see Clark, talking to people with completely different experiences, people who, would be sort of placed in like a separate camps, but now he was able to sort of meet those people and hear their experiences and not feel triggered or not feel like, okay, that is taking my experience away from me. It's not that. We can both coexist. And he just really softened and opened up. And I hope this project will reveal that and inspire other people to maybe do the same thing in their own convictions. Maybe not, but I think it's a really good way to be, to be this sort of open person and just be able to accept multiple truths.
Mm. It's the whole thing of lived and living experience that one cannot deny the other. My lived experience doesn't erase or deny yours, and actually the sharing of them is what would then we find new things. It's like synapses firing in a brain. If they don't connect, they can never come up with something new. I think of the Truth and Reconciliation Committees in South Africa at the end of apartheid, that if everyone wasn't allowed to come and tell their story, how the hell do you heal? It's the point on radicalism. It's there's been some victories.
Yeah.
We have moved the needle, granted not far enough in quite a few different ways, but it means there has to be an evolution of activism in that space, prescribing of cannabis. I'd still say there needs to be radical, in fact, ever more radical in the adult use, because what I fear is coming is quite scary. And then once we move it a couple of inches, you stop, you look around, you assess, you catch your breath, you go, all right, we're trying to move the cabinet a few more feet that way, and you start working at it. And it's that coordination, it's that collective compassion that comes from a consensus that arises from the recognition and the acknowledgement of others' experience. I may have smoked weed every goddamn day since I was 15 and had nothing but joyous fun with it. There might be some 15-year-old out there that smoked weed once and he's 15 years deep into whatever he's dealing with. Yeah. And to then say that it is or it isn't cannabis in either case is incorrect. And unless we hear these stories, we ain't going to move forward. I mean, there is then issues around biases of the way narrative is presented. I think this is one of the things that came up, again, in Oliver Robinson's case, that if there was one person around him that had a positive experience of cannabis, I think the overall narrative from the family would be more nuanced. His brothers launched a campaign called Oliver's Law. Oh my God, I'm trying to pull the things out of my brain. Talking about like they want to sort of ban the prescribing to complex cases, which is my main sort of fear around that, is the use of the word complex. You can't see up there, but I've got my medical health records are like this, and the callous way doctors talk to themselves. You know what I mean? Even just the other fucking day, I had to check something for my lawyers, so I went out to my NHS records. I presented the doctors recently. I've had an ongoing sort of vertigo and head issue since like last year when I collapsed. And the guy's doing the assessment and he's like, yeah, okay, eyes following normal, ears normal, heel to toe normal, comma, smells of cannabis. Why does that need to be on there? What like he can walk, but he smells like weed. Like, that's part of that narrative. Do you know what I mean? Whereas when I turned up, actually, maybe I've smelled tobacco. The tobacco wouldn't mean anything. Maybe the alcohol could have been, if I was say stumbly, that would have then been relevant. Actually, maybe that's where they're coming from then. They're going, cannabis inhibits your motion, so he must be like, how can he walk? Like, there's a form of prejudice in that, is what I'm basically saying. And I'm hoping that, and I think that the fact that you guys have done something so few other documentaries have done, consciously and intentionally, and I imagine with quite a lot of difficulty and need to constantly reinforce it, is to not fall into but all the good. Like, we see what our eyes are attuned to, and you see the positive, and to then be able to go into those spaces and to, as Michaela says, to be able to not see these people as the manifestation of the decades of propaganda that you have faced, to see every Peter Hitchens, every person you've ever come against that has denied the validity of your existence because their interpretation of it is different. So I think, the way that you put it together sounds like it's going to be meaningful across multiple sort of platforms. It's not just for the cannabis.
It was to the project's benefit, because as soon as we started to realize, okay, maybe we need to round off those harsh, radical edges a little bit and hold space for people with other experiences than my own, we started to meet people that really changed how I felt about the whole thing. Like, I don't for 1 minute think that these people are lying when we talk to them. And I would say that quite a few of them now I would consider not close friends, but I would consider friends now. And I never thought that I would be able to say that at the start of this documentary, that I've made friends with people that had addiction problems and psychosis issues around cannabis, and we can coexist. I can go around their place, and like, as long as they're like, oh, vape pen's fine, I don't mind that, so they're like, yeah, it's all good, kind of thing. I'm like, what? So I can take my medicine and you don't mind? And they're like, no, I don't mind, as long as it's not flour, I don't mind. Like, I'm like, okay, I've got a little vape pen, so that's cool with me. And like, it just opened me up and it changed me, and it made me realize, okay, although they are few and far between and they were very hard to find, yes, as you can imagine, it was very, very, very easy to find so many people that wanted to tell me how amazing cannabis was. And we got loads of that as well. You know, this is a balanced documentary. So we show the positive, we show people's life-changing positive outcomes from medicinal cannabis, but then we also show the people that have these life-changing negative outcomes, and we compare and contrast them, and then we try and find out, like, why is this? Why can this same plant help all of these people so much and lead to all of these great, amazing opportunities for the documentary in terms of learning about harm reduction and vaporizing and all of those things too? But how does that true, and how does that balance against all these negative experience of these people that have had serious addiction problems that couldn't stop, that have had psychosis, multiple people with different stories of psychosis, like all triggered, and they recognize it's triggered. None of them are saying cannabis caused it. They all say, you know, it's triggered. This was what triggered me. This is what started it. And we went and we spoke to people like Professor Robin Murray and Marta DeForti at King's College, and we learned so many like interesting.
Swearing on my podcast like that, whoa.
Yeah, so we learned from them, like what they say, and you know, like, yes, in some places we have a slightly different opinion, but there's so many things that actually we agree on, and if we can start thinking about, okay, what are the things that we all agree on here, and we can see them as people that we can work with, we can start to help shape the narrative. If we are like yelling on the sidelines with placards, like, we're never going to be heard here. So I just wanted to like change and adapt and allow myself to, you know, not, you know, someone says to me, oh, I've got addicted to cannabis. I don't need to go, well, you know, you're only mentally addicted to cannabis because physically blah, 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 blah. I don't need to do that. That's their experience. And if they were addicted to it and they couldn't stop it and it had all these negative outcomes from their life, like, who am I to tell them that's not real? Like, that's real to them. That's their story. That's their
lived experience.
That's their lived experience. And we really had to get past this campaign narrative into to allow these two very different but equal truths to coexist in a way that we can try and help both groups and say, hang on a minute, do we have things in common here? And I think we are able to show that in the documentary. We've uncovered some things that have completely shocked me to my core, changed me as a person, and I really hope that the audience, when they come along on that journey, can also recognize that, hey, these truths don't need to be versus each other. They can coexist in harmony, and actually, like, the main thing we need is understanding on all parts. Like, and if we can get that understanding, we have hope of a better future and a better outcomes for like everyone.
Yeah, that's very well said. Sorry, Simpa. I just wanted to add, this is really well said, Clark. And the only thing that I would add to this is that through this approach, we actually clearly understood that cannabis and THC and high THC cannabis, aka skunk, it's a very, very powerful tool and powerful plant, and it's just so potent, and you can take it and you can use it in a way that it's medicinal and healing and just super beneficial, but you can also take this tool and abuse it, and it can become very harmful and dangerous. And it depends how you use it, but it also depends what is your predisposition. And some brains just don't work well with cannabis, and when you take it, it can completely destroy your life. And we had the privilege to talk to someone like that, and it's really sad. And if that person is educated and protected, and if you know, the sort of barriers of prohibition would allow us to talk about this plant more and be more understanding of this plant and its potency, these people could be protected, and that's maybe what we're trying to do here. And at the same time, on the other side, some people can hugely benefit from it, and it can help them improve their lives. And if there is more education and sort of awareness around that, some people just can have way better lives. So it's just about acknowledging the potency and the power that this plant has, and just studying it and exploring it and learning about it. And I feel, like prohibition and stigma and the propaganda in the media is really sort of holding that back. It's causing a lot of these issues, actually. And I think maybe that could be one of the key things to tackle, but that's not probably purpose of this film necessarily, but we are talking about that too. And it's definitely one of the big problems, the prohibition itself. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, we've 100%. It's like there's a joke, like, what is the problems to a what is the communist problem? The fucking the capitalists. And so what is the problem for cannabis? It's prohibition. Like, if you know what I mean, it's the thing is the go-to answer, because 9 times out of 10 you're right just off the bat, and then if you start looking into that other one, you're probably going to get there anyway as well. I've got so many little notes that I've just scribbled down there that I'm going to try and put into one concise sort of response here, and then I'm going to ask sort of a question afterwards. So yeah, the reason I said about swearing on my podcast, I mean, obviously I will use the C word. I will use every word in the English language. Robin Murray, he's a difficult man to read. Peter Hitchens, I feel like I can get a hang on. I feel like I understand why he's a prohibitionist. Robin Murray is an academic, and I didn't say... You don't have to comment on this. I believe that King's College in London has, produced quite a lot of prohibition academia over recent decades, and has led to, restrictions in rollouts of certain drugs, and led to things like, ketamine being the most dangerous thing in the world, but buy our esketamine. Cocaine, don't ever do it, but, numbrino. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing of the medicinalization of currently and still criminalized compounds and substances. The thing that kind of jumped to my brain there, so is he genuine? Like, if he really believes that, this thing can be dangerous, surely he wants a regulation. If he wants a continued flat-out prohibition of it, then I don't believe him to be sort of genuine of it, if he's identifying this issue.
He is genuine, I believe. And, I guess... Really, you'll have to watch the documentary.
Ooh. Like, you better be getting me an early access.
We did meet with him, and we spent several hours with him. And we met Marta de Forti first, and Marta de Forti was doing the Cannabis and Me study to begin with. So she was wanting to engage with the community more, and so we went to King's College. We met with her. We had a really good interview with her, with loads of members of her team, understanding the research that they're undertaking, why it's important and why they're doing it. And she said, well, I like you guys. You guys have made a good impression on me. I'm going to try and introduce you to Robin. So she did. And we went and met with Robin. And he is genuine. He does believe what he is saying.
No, I don't believe whether he's sincere in what he believes. It's just whether he's genuine in that he's wanting to do it to benefit people, as in he's not just going, I'm going to find the data to prove my thesis that cannabis bad, therefore no one cannabis.
No, it's not necessarily that. And what we kind of understood by interviewing him and like kind of going into the specifics, which is in the documentary and will be in the series at some point. But it's just that essentially he had a lot of people coming to him that have had these problems with their sons, with their young people in their lives. And so he is essentially like looking, why is this happening? And, he's quite, the risks are minimal, and he's not afraid to say that. And he's not afraid to say, he said most people won't get psychosis from smoking cannabis. Like he's
to be mindful of his quotes out there, talking about 4 to 6 times more likely to experience psychosis if you consume cannabis.
I know, and this is what he said, is that he often puts out a large body of material, and then the media get it down to these little bite-sized quotes out of it without everything in context. So we're kind of understanding that from him, and we let the man himself tell us why he does what he does, and I have a lot more respect for him than I used to demonize that man a lot as in my campaign life. Like I thought he was not a good person. I thought he had a lot of bias, and now I would say my opinion of him has changed a lot. I definitely don't question whether he's a good person or not. He's undoubtedly doing this to try and help people, and I don't, I don't question that at all now. But I had to meet him to know that. Is he biased in some ways? In my opinion, probably yes, he is. But he's also relevant in some ways still. And to have a dialogue with him, I think, is more important than kind of standing outside of a placard saying, like, I don't agree with your, or whatever. Like, that's not going to change, is it? It's not going to change him. But if we go with a documentary and we've tried to uncover this, maybe he won't listen, but at least we've tried. And yeah, we hopefully will be going back to King's College as well for one final little farewell to the team there and a few other things that we're lining up. But that will be post a successful Kickstarter campaign that we are about to be launching, basically. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll ask you more about your sort of Kickstarter shortly. Probably I should ask this off the record, but if there is opportunity to pass on my details, I would very much like an opportunity to have Robin on the podcast and kind of go through the nuances, because I've read quite a lot of him over the years, and all I ever end up reading is summations, because I don't have access to full academic journals. So reporting on it, he is always sort of sensationalized. Like I said, I've been lucky enough to, when I say lucky enough, you're never lucky enough to read a lot of Peter Hitchens, but I've read through a lot of Peter Hitchens over the years, and like I said, I've got a strong idea of where I believe he sort of stands with things, and I don't, and I never do, vilify individuals for who they are as people. I don't ever know them as people. I don't know, do they kick their dog? Do they like 2 sugars in their tea? I don't know any of that. I only can ever know, obviously, what they put out into the sort of the public arena, and the weaponization by the right-wing press in the UK of his more recent work has, perked up my kind of, defenses, as it were. The other thing,
I think it would be a very interesting interview, and you should. So, have you reached out to Robin then? Have you talked?
No, it was because if you guys have got some friendly connections with King's College, I'm not sure they're overly aware of my existence or would be overly interested. But
it would be very cool, and yeah, we should try and do that. I think it would be a very interesting conversation. We have to have these types of conversations, even if you disagree with some of the things, and just give him that platform to respond, and go back and forth. I think it's really powerful, and we might find out that we're actually not on the opposite sides at all. We're not the enemies. It
reduces the darkness. So in any point, what you don't know is infinitely larger than what you will ever learn. So if I can meet you and learn you, as you said, the reason it becomes easier is you've gone from this, oh my God, to and instantly the human brain is a magical machine. It takes 1,000 data points when you first meet somebody that instantly start ticking off, closing down tabs that you've built on these people, ideas, and it builds a model that is obviously unique to you as an individual and is run through the filter of who you are and your perception, but gives you a grounding for yourself of who this person is. You then, through consensus, the more people meet, people travel. It's one of the things we found in the community is people could really get to know each other. Obviously, you can never truly know everybody, but if we don't meet each other and we don't express our stories, as you said, we'll not get a rounded image of the reality of things. And if we're then working on a 75% map, that 25% could have the answers. and it's that having these realistic conversations. The other thing is we were talking about with the people having these major issues is something I think we're going to see backhandedly through analysis of spice, of kind of what is happening with the burnout and overstimulation of neurological receptors in the brain due to consumption of synthetic cannabinoids that are hundreds of times more powerful and potent than the naturally produced compounds. And so I think the kind of the mapping of that will be able to start to get an idea of what is moving, because I mean, even things like CBD, still we've got the hangover of 2015 marketing of non-psychoactive, yet it's active on 20 plus peripheral pathways. You know, it affects all kinds of neurohormones and chemistry, the combination and synergy of different cannabinoids just in ratio of isolation. Then, like I said, you add in the variables of the plant and all of the other compounds, and then you've got the cultivation techniques and what is then added to it, what is whatever else can be problematic. So a couple of things that I wanted to sort of notion about here is nut allergy is the way I kind of look at it. All right, if we're going, there are some people that when they're in a room or a confined space that their lungs absorb enough THC that is being carboxylated, it affects their neurological system detrimentally. Then places that have THC would have signage or whatever. So you'd know of like, oh, there's a cigar club. To join the cigar club, you've got to then sign a waiver that goes, I'm going into a space with tobacco smoke. You can't then sue them 10 years later and go, I have lung cancer. No, do you know what I mean? You take the risk on yourself. So a regulation of a system should always be to the masses, but with the knowledge of the minimal, of the smallest numerous amount of people. And if these people do have these reactions, then we have to look at this more as an allergy until we have an understanding of the nuance of what's going on there, because if it then in the vast majority of people it's beneficial. I mean, we know even just the basic science of these are phytocannabinoids. You have an endogenous cannabinoid system, you produce cannabinoids endogenously, you supplement this, that we understand, like I said, page 1 of that book of that right now, and we're applying to it, although we still talk about CB1, CB2. What do we have? Like 10 unknown receptors at this point, but they're all like TVR, TVR's a British car. It's TR, TV. You know the list I'm on about, the list of other peripheral cannabinoids. And then there's certain things that will work in different ways. And like we said about affecting serotonin, dopamine, these baser systems that we're just sort of scratching the surface of. So there could very well be, oh, well, that one guy, they had this one over-the-counter medication. It turns out if you take that product with this, like we know CBD affects cytochrome P450, the enzyme in the liver that affects the metastasization, that's bloody cancer, the metabolizing of pharmaceutical drugs, so it can, you know, either strengthen or weaken them because it'll create like a compounding effect. So there's so much more nuance. And I think if we don't have conversations from the cannabis side, it becomes these polarized binary things of, well, all the cannabis people are saying I'm the devil, so the cannabis people become the devil. And you go, well, they are saying that you are the reason all of us get nothing, so you become the devil. And without the conversations and with the polarization then built into the British media, we're not getting anywhere. So I'm interested to hear to see the documentary, to see the series, to see how you guys kind of navigate that, and to see what these people have to say when they feel their voices are heard, that they're the same as us, that we're not in a room as a lamb amongst lions, that they feel that they have an opportunity, they're not going to be, you know, devoured for their speeches or whatever.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that, because you will not see that, but behind the scenes, there's been a lot of trust building and a lot of very delicate dancing, metaphorically speaking, obviously, where we had to gain their trust, but not in a manipulative way. We obviously want to tell their stories genuinely, and we're genuinely curious, and we storytellers. We're not scientists, we're not doctors, we're not, you know, like trying to fix anything here or change their mind. All we just want to do is to shine a light on that perspective. And so to sort of create a safe environment for them to do that, you have to be open, you have to be patient, and just build trust by having multiple conversations. Sometimes it would take months and months of correspondence and calls, and sort of understanding them off record, and then explaining where we come from, and to just engage in these off-record conversations and kind of building a friendship even. So then when we meet each other with all these cameras and lights and action and microphones, we can just do this more effortlessly, and we talk about the things we've already addressed off record. There are questions clearly prepared in advance. There are boundaries set. We make clear what can be on what cannot be discussed. Some topics can be very sensitive, and you don't want to put people through, sort of re-traumatization, or you don't want to talk about things that are just, not for the public ear or eye. So it's a very delicate dance, and it's a very important part of documentary filmmaking, what is actually happening off record. And I'm glad I can speak about that because, you will see the final thing, but there is just so much delicate work happening behind the scenes. And I just wanted to say this thing that came up when you were talking just now with the people that experience psychosis, and sometimes that led to schizophrenia. It's kind of more obvious that there is a problem, that this brain can't tolerate cannabis or can't tolerate high THC, let's put it that way, because there is more nuance with the CBD and other cannabis-based medicines that are not harmful, like Sativex, I believe. But what is another sort of subject here that I don't know if I should even talk about it, because I still feel it's so delicate, and I think we are going to be figuring this out as we edit. But that is addiction. And I find the subject and the topic of addiction so much more nuanced than psychosis and schizophrenia. Because what addiction is, it's a habitual habit, or in this case, use that has negative effects on you. What the negative effect is very complicated, because or it can be very complicated. It doesn't have to be completely straightforward and clear to a cannabis user. And so when we look at patients, they do use their medicine repetitively and regularly, and they have to use it that way. They have to use it every day. And they patients, it's their medicine. With addicts, it would be the same, but there is a point when we would identify some effects of that cannabis is negative and harmful. And so you're an addict and you have to stop, and you have a problem, and you have to completely, just stop the use. And so when we were talking to some people from, let's say, Marijuana Anonymous, it was really difficult for me personally, or not difficult, but that was the moment when I just didn't know. I felt, and I still don't know, I just felt like there is such a thin line here. And who am I to sort of, identify as an addict, or who am I to identify as a patient? Like, I don't know. It just feels like this is the moment when the nuance starts to get really complicated and tricky. And maybe I'm curious to hear your opinion, Simpa, and Clark, feel free to join in. But this is the moment that I just find this conversation difficult.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the notes I've got here. I've literally written the word donuts, which is to remind me to talk about basically the human consciousness's predilection towards problematic consumption of things. We're just geared for it. I often make the joke and quip that the first dealer we introduce children to is Haribo. And we do. We teach them about addiction. We go, if you just shut the fuck up, just please be quiet, I'll give you some sugar. And they do, and they recognize it. And it's always the thing. It's the chocolate at Easter. It's all the little treats. We're reinforcing that behavior societally. And capitalism has a huge role to play in that, because if they get them young, get them for life. That was the tobacco companies. That was all about brand identity and association. And on the point of like identification with addicts, I believe that if we're all being truly honest with ourselves, we can, because we were all addicts in some form. Like, I mean, without making a stupid point of being like we're addicted to oxygen or water, you know what I mean, which is just reductive and bullshit. But we all have something in our lives that if we truly sat with ourselves for a couple of minutes, I mean, I'm looking at one right now. Look, I gotta look at my fingerprints on my cracked screen. But you know
Addiction.
I mean? We know what these things are. Look at what has just happened with the lawsuit in America around Meta, around these programs being the source of detriment to people's lives. Yet, because now I need that thing to sign into my whatever, I need to get my emails, I need my messages, I need to be on 14 different platforms. You know, I need to always have a camera in my pocket, obviously, in case I've got to record some viral event and, you know, make some money off that. Like, I'm just talking in the abstract there, but you know what I mean? Like, we have this thing. And so that is, it's the same thing. The difference is supply. If you always had your heroin, there isn't a heroin user I've ever met. And I talk to people up and down from all class, and I've been looking to travel the goddamn world and work with people in all sorts of fields. Nobody is taking heroin and going, you know what? I'm going to kill myself. Like, that's not the thing they're doing. They're self-medicating. Heroin being diamorphine, one of the best painkillers in the fucking history of humanity. There's a reason it persists nearly a century after its criminalization. Do you know what I mean? And it's not just because of the poppies and because of war, trade, and slush funds and all of that stuff that we're not getting into, but it's because of the human psyche. Life is pain in some ways, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's social. And the big thing of what I wanted to ask actually is around, and it's something I might stumble through, so I apologize to anybody if this comes across offensive, but everybody knows my class position, as it were. But I feel from the stories that you see of the addiction, cannabis ruined my son, my daughter, it's from upper classes. And the entirety of the people around that person may very well be medicinally consuming it. They may have an underlying issue and they're really struggling with their position in the world. They consume this cannabis and the parents go, you fucking do that, I'm going to kick you out of this house. The teachers go, you're going to fail college. Do you know what I mean? They go to the doctor and the doctor goes, oh, that poison skunk, you're killing yourself. Do you not think that's going to fuck with somebody's head like that?
I mean, that is a recurrent theme that we have found with the people that we have filmed with. That is a recurrent theme. But for sure, Robin Murray went into that as well in terms of the people that he was talking about and the people that he were coming to him about telling them or whatever. He wasn't shy in saying it was all, upper class people saying it. We spoke with Lord Monson, whose son also, unfortunately, had a problem and unfortunately went and killed himself. But that is a failure of the NHS ultimately, because he went to the NHS and said he was going to kill himself, and they said, "Oh, you still take cannabis, do you?" "No, we're not going to see you." And then he went and killed himself. So, it's terrible what happened. It's awful what happened. No father would ever want to go through that with their son. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there is a theme of classism here. There is a theme of like, okay, it's psychiatric wards for the upper classes and it's prisons for everyone else, and unfortunate as it is, that is the world that we live in right now. And, what can you do other than kind of show that and show the people that are going through that and follow their lives, try and understand them a bit. And, I didn't actually go on the Lord Monson. I was not very well. And so Michaela had to deal with that by herself, with Govardhan as well. But, I think it was quite difficult to speak with Lord Monson because, he's very passionate and radical as a anti-skunk campaigner. So it's very like he's very solid and solidified in his views, and being challenged. Okay, what even is skunk? Like, it was difficult. It was difficult, but we learned that no father wants to go through that, and good on Lord Monson for trying to do something about it, but to hopefully mean that other people don't have to go through what he went through. And is that all relevant to class, and is that all relevant to that sort of things? Absolutely, it is. we didn't necessarily go there and say it in the documentary, i.e. we didn't call it out, but if that's what you're looking for, that certainly is a recurrent theme.
It sounds like it'll be sort of self-evident within the totality of the documentary. Yeah, I mean, I can speak of my own experience. So being younger and getting sort of kicked out of the house, and my mother literally being like, we're going to smell of weed, bringing it into the house before I was even rebelling and smoking in the house. And having these issues, and it being like the harder she pushed against it, the more it was like, well, no, this thing is really fucking helping me. The day-to-day continuity and consistency, and to you're not seeing that. All you're smelling is weed, me coming in late or whatever, people knocking on the door or whatever other associated behaviors. And because of decades of propaganda and of media misrepresentation in TV and films and whatever else, they'll go, well, he's going to be shooting up heroin. Like, I mean, damn, woman knew I got a needle phobia. I ain't never going to shoot up no heroin. But I've tried the vast majority of drugs. But the issue is not about the access to the substance. I think it's about the way in which you consume it. Johann Hari talks about this, of the... If you go out and say you've never had socialization, you've never connected with friends, like, I mean, I'm autistic, ADHD, I really struggled. I was removed from mainstream education, was put into, SEN education where you'd stay for like 2 weeks, go home for 2 days. It was quite brutalistic. As a lot of people can notice, like my bottom teeth are fucked because my head teacher knocked them out. It was not a fun experience. And then later I came on to cannabis, wonderful substance, very useful to me. And then my family were like, no, fuck you, bad, got to stop. Then when I came back to the house after mental health breaks, going through the system and the system being like, it's all drugs, it's all the cannabis, it's all the things, because I was honest with them. I was going, ecstasy really helps me. As somebody that's neurodivergent, like I was saying before, being able to take pills and then go out to a rave, that is therapy. That is medicinal. That is like, oh my God, to be able to go and talk to people honestly, to be able to connect to them, to be able to hug strangers, to be able to bond with them in such an extreme and wonderful way. Like, people have that for different substances, for different things. And again, my experience isn't the same as everybody. Somebody might take a pill and struggle with it mentally. I mean, yeah, same with any substance. It's not about the substance per se. It's the setting of it. And so then if you take one of those drugs and you have a terrible experience, your likelihood to form a dependency on it is a lot less reduced. Whereas then when I had my summer of ecstasy, and got at one point in this flat, we did a 3-day rave. And by the end of it on the Tuesday, I had a black lip because I'd been taking dozens of pills over the weekend and chewing my own face off, literally. But again, that was therapy, potentially problematic, but the people I had around me were good people. You know what I mean? There'd always be somebody sort of checking in, or you hydrate and we eat, you know what I mean? And the group would kind of self-regulate. And so that became more for me, because that became the access point of socialization. The big one that most people still use to this day is still alcohol. That's the whole construct of pubs and bars and restaurants and cafes and is come drink this booze that drops the anxiety that we all have about being human and the fragility of our existence, so that we can just chat shit. Like, we need that for these compounds. We need that for these substances, and we need to have these conversations. That, there's a wonderful campaigner is she a lord? She from a gentried family. She's like 2 sons. They died from ecstasy. They're from contaminated ecstasy pills, from adulterants. And she campaigns to legalize ecstasy, to try and create a regulated system. In the opposite as to the other lords' sort of approach to it. I can understand the passionate thing of going, well, this plus my son equals my son no longer that bad. Where she then went out and understood more of sort of the nuance within it. And we need all these stories to combine together to have this conversation about, well, things are already here. The people are already doing it. Like 2 of my crews that are at our 420 event were at Egg Tech recently. The police, 100 of the fuckers, went in with dogs and batons and started beating people's heads in because they were taking ecstasy in the woods who listened to the sound systems. Like, those people are trying desperately to connect. They don't drink. They want to rave in a field. We need to adjust as a society to this. And if we're just going to have this prohibitive crackdown and this continuation of it, you're going to end up with people forming dependencies, because if they have to hide away, if they have to form these little groups, and then everybody becomes the enemy and every siren is the devil, of course they're going to associate mainstream society with the authority and with punishment and with the withdrawal of the thing that helps them. You know, the whole thing of like people judge ketamine users massively because of the optics of it. They're ketty, they're sketty, they're whatever parlance it is that you use in your area. You know what I mean? And it's, yeah, they're in a vulnerable fucking state, but they're struggling with something that thing really fucking helps that no other thing touches. I've had some really close friends that have struggled massively with it, some to the point of them needing medical interventions because of the consequences on their body. We need to do something around this. We need to understand how to deal with the symptoms of addiction, not the individual actions. I often use the analogy as somebody that self-harmed for many years. You can't just keep removing every sharp thing. Eventually you're going to have to ask the fucker why they're cutting themselves.
Love that. Yeah, that's a great point, Simpa, honestly. And you will find that the causes are very complex and very nuanced and not straight, and the solutions won't be straightforward, but I think that's the way to go. And to remove stigma and shame and judgment, you know, to allow these individuals to exist and exactly try to understand them without any judgment and see that they are just a product of something way bigger than them, and go there and tackle that. And in the meantime, create safety and support for these individuals. And there is just so much that can be done. It's such a big topic. And, you know, we are tackling only a little drop in the ocean. And it's good to be humble. You know, me talking about addiction even today with you, I feel humbled and I feel like I don't know anything. I know nothing, but I think it's important, and I think the attitude is exactly what we established. It's the openness, non-judgment, and going to the root. And cannabis is just one plant. You know, we can abuse anything. We can misuse anything. And I like what you said earlier. I feel like inherently we are trying to escape this human experience. And we, for some sort of weird reason, we have all these different substances to do that. So it feels like an interesting dance. Like, okay, we are in these bodies, in these structures and systems that are really complex and cause a lot of pain to every single one of us, depending where you are. There are different levels to it. But we can all agree that the human experience is just inherently really difficult and painful and complex. And then we have these tools to sort of escape it temporarily. And it's so nuanced again, because I feel that we should be able to, but it's not sustainable. I think we shall medicate and we shall self-soothe in order to cope and continue, but the work always has to be done in the root of those things, you know, in the root of that pain. Like we have to go through to transform and alchemize something. The only way is to go through, not around. And so if these substances allow us to do that, let's fucking use them without any judgment. Like, let's go, they are there. But let's not avoid, let's not bypass. And I'm talking to the collective, not to an individual, because every individual has a completely different story and different capacity to go through. So this is more a message to the collective, not an individual people, because again, I understand that we can apply the same thing to everybody, and for some people that might be difficult, and they can't go through, and that's fine. We shall have compassion for that too. But as a collective, let's go through. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like you said, the nuance of it, I mean, we're only even talking here in the realm of sort of medicinal function, and then the idea of chemical escapism, as it were. Whereas one man's escapism is another man's enhancement. So, you know what I mean? I can take a couple of tabs of acid and go run around the woods and connect with what I feel is my God, which is nature, which is the animating principle and force around the world. It is the thing that from water and soil creates the plants I smoke. You know what I mean? It's whatever that thing is. And to somebody else, the idea of taking a couple of tabs of acid and being in them lost in the woods, like, is hell to them. And again, it's back to that sort of perception of thing of like some people, 20 beers and a fucking bag of Charlie tonight, lads. Oh, we're getting on it. That, maybe setting that's got the right, in the right environment. Maybe I go, we'll have a quick look at it, you know what I mean? But we should be entitled to that in the same way of like food.
Yeah.
So we have this spectrum of food, and we go, then some people can form dependence issues around food. That's back to my sort of donut analogy, as it were. And we have to then recognize that the access to a substance can modulate and increase a thing. So say in an area, if you have, and we saw this in Oregon, for example, where they decriminalized all possession, but in such a warped way that they didn't use funding and they didn't move more of the cannabis money into treatments for problematic consumers. So what they ended up doing was effectively creating a paradigm to prove that the decriminalization of substances doesn't work, when they handicapped it from the start. So we have to have the other sort of mechanisms in place for that system, that if you then put a load of drugs where there's people with the propensity to have problematic relationships with them, yeah, you're going to have more people taking those drugs. But like you said, if you change the paradigm, like we have with cannabis, the 100,000, let's call it a round number just because it's easy to work with, patients in the UK, less than 10 years ago, 8 years ago, they were all problematic daily skunk users. But we've just changed the law and the perception, and now all of a sudden that's medicinal every day. So we go back to, again, heroin. The reason that people will fuck up so much, again, and I've known a lot of people with problematic relationships and spent time with people in rough sleeping populations. I need 3 bags a day. My 3 bags, 50 quid, whatever, is bad numbers. So I need to make my 50 quid every day. Dave, my dealer, that was giving me, a vermouth, a real fancy liqueur, high-end product, I could go and I could get my 3 bags. Dave got raided and arrested. Now Mike stepped in. Mike's stepping on his product. I suddenly need 6 bags. So then I've got to up and get 100 quid. So then I'm going out and committing more inquisitive crime. So there's all of these issues around sort of restriction and supply that causes the bottleneck and the problem. Whereas if they were to go back to then, okay, these guys, what is actually happening here, and we identify it as, you're using it as an analgesic. Your emotional, mental anguish is such to a degree that you need to physically turn off your body. Okay, you're in a point of dependency physically, physiologically at this point. Let's prescribe you this product as we originally did under a system called the British system. Ironically, I think we were good at naming shit up until the late 70s. Like after the signing of the Misuse of Drugs Convention, Misuse of Drugs Act went into effect in the 71. There were several years where we prescribed heroin on the NHS because we recognised in this population that if we gave them this product, they weren't out committing crimes, they weren't on the street, there wasn't these issues. And then alongside of that, we were trying to give them at the time their version of psychoanalytic sort of behavioural therapies. We need to take those kind of approaches, like I said, with the small population, but that isn't to then pathologize them and to then medicinalize it and go, well, you need this system. You can have a prescribed or a lawful access system, as it were, but if you don't, as we said, draw the goalposts wide enough, you just push the population either side and then go, look, it doesn't work. So it's the whole sort of thesis, I guess, of the documentary is sort of stating is that it's having this rational, open, broad conversation about the subject. If that could be extrapolated out into other substances and beyond that into all kind of this is difficult because then it falls on a moralism thing, but I think moralism derives from the law as in like a humanist moral position, not a religious theocratic moral position. So I think everything should be discussed, minus sort of things like pedophilia. Like, I think that should be understood into a degree of that there is a pathology there under the law of how consent works. Nobody under 18 can consent. I mean, there's obviously nuance of like 16, 17 and how that kind of Romeo Juliet laws work. But all of the human behaviors that we got, that's mental. Like the Wright brothers at some point will have been called fucking insane. You want to fly in a wooden box off a cliff. You're mental. You're mental. Lock him up. Yeah, now we have air travel. Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like we have to understand that if enough humans do a thing, like when parkour or skateboarding for decades was this criminal demon thing. Do you know what I mean? Now it's in the fucking Olympics. Parkour, and they're hiring all these security firms, putting up extra cameras and or urban explorers and that, and all this extra info. Get away, you're not allowed. But people clearly care. Hundreds of thousands of people watch those videos. Millions of people interact with it. Again, it's this fore-moralizing, this limited perception that comes from sort of pearl clutching. And I think the hangover we have with prohibition of drugs is that it's the bottle in the cork, that if that suddenly goes, the free party kids, we can't demonize them because they're taking drugs now, because drugs are normal, and you like wine, they want to take some ecstasy. It then creates a problem around the restrictions that are created under our current system that are there to ultimately push our money into the hands of private capital. You've gone outside, is it? You're paying me for your parking, it's a private company. Oh, you go for a coffee, is it £14.50? Don't know where you're buying that coffee, but Jesus Christ. But do you know what I mean? You're always exerting something, whereas the generation of people that now own that infrastructure were the ones who went to parks with the picnic baskets and blankets and jam sandwiches and all of that stuff. And yet through this hyper-consumptionism, we're connected to it. So to scoop back to addiction there's people addicted to things like Starbucks. They're addicted to the caffeine, but psychologically it has to be Starbucks. I need to adjust so you can see the logo when I walk. Like that attachment, it's
exactly the attachment to
something
things,
that Johan Hari spoke of in Chasing the Scream, and he said it eloquently, beautifully. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. That if we were connected to each other rather than this thing going, there's millions of people and look at all the people. I'm sat alone in a room. You know, got the coffee and the brand and me. Look at, I don't know, ironically, I'm wearing loads of logos and shit today, THTCs, Durham, whatever. But I'm repping what I love. But we then identify with these things. I am this, I am that. And that becomes a stand-in for us actually connecting as people and being vulnerable and raw enough to talk to each other in a real, meaningful way. And so we end up just as these insular pods walking around in this meat space, because all this is to a lot of us now is the loading screen for our real character.
And just sort of continue this philosophical discussion we're having right now, the connection to the self as well. Self that is already in peace and complete and whole, and it doesn't need anything else. And that's like a state of being that we all have access to. And that could be the sort of philosophy of fighting the addiction. But it's not as simple. And, you know, maybe just going...
Yeah, you can't just go to the woods and do yoga and all of a sudden you're not going to smoke crack.
Yeah. I mean, some people, it's just not maybe available to everybody. And I feel as a philosophy, it's beautiful. And if you have the privilege to sort of tap into that state, like, please do and let go of these attachments, because it's never going to really fulfill you. Having said that, I just feel this need to sort of bring it back to patients and to Clark and to people I had the privilege to work with in this film, where cannabis is hugely beneficial. And those are people who, you know, suffer from different conditions, and they live with diagnoses where you don't have the privilege to be completely sort of detached and independent of anything. You very much depend on medicine, and one of those medicines is cannabis. That if you don't have that, your life is just completely fucking shit. And I feel that to acknowledge that is like, it's quite important. And I think we should maybe move into that now, because again, we're just exploring these different topics and perspectives, and that's very good. I love this, and this is exactly what we should be doing in terms of anything. But in this case, I feel like, some people have illnesses for which they have to have something to be able to live daily life. And how powerful and how amazing it is that this plant can do that and can replace pharmaceutical drugs that come with side effects that you don't really want to experience. And so to be able to replace that with cannabis, I think it's so powerful, and it should be definitely allowed, and it should be talked about more, not because that's the only way to use it, but because that could be the beginning of understanding that it is a medicine too. And that it's not a drug, you know, it's the language, it's the mythology, it's the myths, it's the stories we tell ourselves and we tell to the masses. But there might be, you know, we can use a completely different language and have a different relationship with it suddenly. So rewriting that connotation with it's a drug and it's illegal into it's a medicine and it helps people, and look at these patients and how it helps them. I think I think it can be one of, it's just a very powerful narrative, I find. And it's been very interesting for me to explore that and to learn about these people. So just wanted to sort of bring it back to that, or just move it that direction.
Yeah. I hear you. The irony, I guess, in sort of the statement there is, in the pursuit of creating a medicine, and medicine being sort of by definition something that is regulated and created in our current system under the pharmaceutical system, that would by definition be a drug. Whereas the medicinal consumption of it as in a floral form, or somebody growing it without intervention with a doctor, is just consuming a plant. So it's one of the things that, to go back to sort of the patient thing sort of here, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about sort of the people with sort of psychosis rising or being triggered by sort of consumption of cannabis. Are you worried about an unintended kind of juxtaposition of putting prescribed, regulated cannabis versus legacy cannabis?
I think you mean the part when I was talking about addiction versus patients.
No, sort of earlier when Clark was talking about the experience of the people that you interviewed. The narrative, like we said, about there being this kind of self-evident sort of class problem, for lack of a better phrasing. That is there any worry that? Is there space for the concept then of medicinal consumption within the series that is not inside of the prescription system? For example, I'm going to talk about Bob. Let's say Bob gets a prescription a couple of times a year to protect his license in his home. Bob grows his own supply, has done so for a decade plus, consumes all his own product, has his own access to cultivars and mothers, etc. Where does Bob fall? Because according to the law, that is street weed. He's cultivating skunk, but then the couple of pots he gets a year, they're medicine. Even though I still don't quite understand how they managed to make that magic happen, but that's medicine. Is this something that is actively sort of brought up and discussed within it? Can you get what I'm sort of alluding to? I'm just worried that the end narrative becomes, well, we've talked entirely about the prescription system of cannabis, and then it being sort of doctor-initiated medicinal consumption rather than self-initiated medicinal consumption. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, sorry, the question
was this for Clark? Was this for Clark?
Either of you, really. And so I guess to add to that, to broaden it, to make it a bit easier maybe to answer, that you're sort of worried about, where am I looking here? Creating a polarizing narrative, I guess, is sort of what I'm saying.
There's some, I think we did think about that, and there's definitely some parts that we filmed where we actually get a Purple Pro and we compare and contrast different street cannabis versus medical cannabis. And as part of that, I talked about how the UPA estimates that there's 2 million people that are consuming cannabis illegally and only 100,000 that are prescribed. So, essentially the majority of people are still criminals, and those that can afford it are not. But what is the difference here? So we kind of try to tackle that with a specific scene there, where we compared and contrasted the different types of cannabis. And again, we were a little bit shocked by what we found out by doing that as well. And that does allude to the Oliver Robinson case and what happened there, and the current kind of spotlight on the industry and some of its bad practices. So that is something that alludes to for sure. It isn't necessarily something that we thought about, if that makes sense. We just assumed that that will be obvious, but it was important to try and say a little something about that, and we thought that the Purple Pro and comparing THC levels is a great opportunity to kind of tackle that, so the audience knows that there is nuance there. There isn't just like, these people that have it, they're great and everyone's fine, and the people that have it illegally, well, they're all criminals. They should still be locked up. I didn't want the audience to go away with that in their mind. So we did that kind of bit of filming there. But yeah, overall, I think, it was just really interesting to understand a different narrative to my own. And that took a lot of, a hell of a lot of work behind the scenes by Michaela, lining people up and kind of understanding, like, how can we be in the same room together? Like that was like the probably the most difficult thing to overcome, is like, okay, how are we going to put Clark in a room with a psychosis patient? How does that work? Like, Clark needs to, I'm talking about myself here, but I need to medicate. So how does that work? How am I going to do that? Is that okay with you? Is that not okay with you? Some people are like, yeah, fine, bring a vape pen. Others are like, don't mind at all. Bring flour, bring your vape right there in my living room. Really don't care. As long as I'm not doing it, doesn't bother me. Good for you. And then others that are like, well, actually, find it quite triggering, and I've just come out of a hospital. So if there could not be any cannabis on that shoot, that would be great. So I'm like, hang on, how do I work that out? So we did manage to work all that out, but it did take a lot of toing and froing, and also a lot of just understanding that, okay, if somebody says, okay, the smell of cannabis actually is a problem for me, like, you kind of have to respect that, and their story, and capturing their story and understanding what they went through is more important than me going, well, I'm entitled to smell of cannabis because I have a prescription. And I am entitled to smell of cannabis, but it's because I've got the money for it, which is wrong, right? Like, I can smell of cannabis because I've got a prescription, but somebody else can't because they don't, and they're a criminal or whatever. That's, again, it's not necessarily why we made the film, but certainly that is something that is pointed out as or the series now, should I say. We keep saying film because we're so used to it being a film, but we have changed it to a series, yeah. But that's certainly something that is part of it. There's not like a bit exclusively dedicated to that, but we definitely touch on it in a few different moments, and certainly in a few different interviews as well. So, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And so, Simpa, just to clarify, you kind of concerned about the sort of recreational versus medicinal, right? That the medicinal will be...
No, that it's within the parlance of, I guess, recreational medicinal. If we're talking about that as a binary, it would be a division within the medicinal consumption, as in the...
And I'm aware that it's happening.
There could be a narrative, as we're kind of seeing from, especially, phrase this delicately, influences within sort of I call it the medical cannabis industrial complex, that are creating a supremacist narrative, that are creating a binary, us good, them bad. And there is this, it's like the Dutch have the backdoor problem, which every time I say Dutch and backdoor, people think the wrong goddamn thing. But the Dutch call their supply issue with the coffee shops the backdoor issue, which means you're allowed to have 500 grams on site and you can sell that. But how that 500 grams materializes in that building or where it gets grown, who fucking knows? And so about that magical issue we have in the UK, that I think some refined figures were somewhere in the region of 1.2 million medicinal consumers, and somewhere closer to 3 and a bit regular sort of cannabis consumers, or overall cannabis consumers. And they're a criminal up until that magic moment. The doctor goes, and you're safe. that feels like racketeering to me. You know, that's mafioso coming around. Ooh, nice life you got here. You want that driving license?
How ridiculous. Yeah. I see how ridiculous these lines and borders and little things can just completely shift the way we perceive it. And it's, again, just like language and myths and even laws, you know, that are so arbitrary. And I don't know, as an impartial, objective documentarian who sort of entered this world and completely immersed myself in it, I want to believe that this project allows us to look at the plant as it is without all these arbitrary narratives around it. And there's so many, right? I hope that what we've achieved is to show the plant as it is in its complete, pure and naked form, and show the power and show the potency. And of course, you then can take it into these different systems and structures and regulations and put it in a system, yeah, and it suddenly has these different shades and colors and narratives around it. But I hope we revealed the true essence of it and what the potential it has. And, you know, what I've observed is that the medicinal and medical facade opens doors that sometimes need to be opened first for the rest to then follow. And I don't know, you can disagree, and I understand that there is this sort of conflict or maybe, you know, ongoing discourse within the cannabis world where, yeah, people might disagree with this statement, but this is just what I've observed, that it can help to go first. So for those who are really against it, and for the stigma and misperceptions to be removed, or at least weakened, for the rest of you to then come and, you know, come together as a team, because you basically fighting for the same thing. Like, you are on the same side. It's just different ways and how to get there. And I understand it's complicated, but again, I see the plant at the forefront of it all. It was hard to say. I see the plant, and I see that the plant is powerful, and it should be at the forefront of it all, and we shall not forget about that. And yes, we can do our bits, and those bits might be very different and contradictory. We all can play our different parts in it, but we all wanting to do the same thing anyway, right? It's just different ways how to get there. And maybe I'm naive and misinformed, and everything I just said is completely like stupid, but I just wanted to share my experience of it as someone who is not necessarily involved, you know. I am in my own objective way, but this is how I view this thing. And again, if medical and medicinal can remove some barriers, like, fuck yeah, let's go, thank you, and the rest can just swim right in and do their thing and make it available and accessible to everybody. You know what I mean?
So I've just come up with the perfect visualization to describe exactly what I was going to articulate there.
Awesome.
Have you seen the Batman movie with the Joker? Don't know what that one's called. Dark Knight Rises, maybe. There's a scene on that, the Joker, to prove a point to the Batman. The Batman. I sound like a fucking grandpa over here. Jesus Christ. You can tell I haven't kept up to date with most modern media. To prove a point to Batman about human nature, he puts those bombs, or he says he put those bombs on the ferries full of people. And that giant black guy, the prisoner, steps forward and grabs the thing and goes, I'll do what needs to be done. And he throws it out the fucking window. I agree in principle with what you've just said, but what hurts me is the freedom of the 100,000 is predicated on the suffering of the 1.2 million. That if now, 8 years after the fact, if we were to go back and look at that picture outside of Parliament and those children, how many of those families have got their access on the NHS?
Yeah.
Like, if we look at who's profiting and who's winning, yes, we've got our little bit of protection. I very rarely quote the founding peoples of our cousins over the pond, but, you know, Ben Franklin said that, you know, if anyone who surrenders his freedom for security deserves neither. And I'm not, I say that as somebody with a prescription, I'm aware, I'm not making the point some people might try and make a hyperbole statement of that I'm making there. There's just, my soul hurts.
Yeah,
that
hear
my
that.
security, I can drive. The cops can pull me over and I'm like, yo, you all right, dude? There's some weed. What's your crack? Let's go. I know the law inside and fucking out. I want them to detain me because that's money per hour. I will sue them, bend them over backwards. Yet, so many other people, the cops can use it. I pulled you over. Smells of cannabis. Even if it doesn't, just to go through your pockets, just to be able to just get in your life. Like, that is so bothersome to me.
I'll be honest here as well. I agree 100% wholeheartedly with what you're saying.
I'm not saying like remove the script system.
And that's why we've got to keep on making things. That's why we've got to keep on going. That's why we've got to keep on shining a light on things. That's why we've got to use them to open doors to look back and like try and hold a helping hand back and go, hang on, what about everyone else? Like I stood outside Parliament and I said, no patient left behind.
Yeah, that's
what I said. Yeah,
I remember.
That is not lost on me, that all these millions are left behind. So that's what drives me to still keep going. That's what drives me to go, yes, great, I've got my prescription. I'm sorted. I can have my son and I can have no interference from the council. When the council goes to me, oh, we've heard about cannabis. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got my prescription. So there you go, off you fuck. And they did. And they, not to have a go at them or anything, like, the safeguarding and they checked and whatever. But what about the person that doesn't have the prescription that's safeguarding, but actually they're an MS patient or a Crohn's disease patient or a mental health patient or any form of patient that has the same issue where their life is hindered by some form of ailment, and then they find that cannabis helps, right? And then they still face all this stigma and discrimination and everything. That's what drives me forward. That's what drives me to spend the last 4 years of my life making this documentary, the last 8 years thinking about how to make this documentary, because I want to try and move this forward to understand, okay, why are millions of people still left out in the dark? And I truly believe the reason is because the media have completely demonized THC via skunk, and that is not the only reason, but that is, in my opinion, one of the main reasons holding that's the damn wall holding the tidal wave back right now. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fucking hack away at that skunk narrative so that hopefully the nuance can be understood, so that those millions of people are no longer criminalized, so that we understand, okay, what is the difference between cannabis-based medicinal product and illegal cannabis? How come if it's grown by that person, I'm fine, but if it's grown by that person, or should I dare have the cheek to plant a seed myself that I'm a criminal? I can be prescribed, let's say I've got prescribed purple kush. I could be prescribed purple kush, but then if I bought some purple kush seeds, I planted that seed and then I grew it, I'm a criminal, but I've been prescribed that. How does that make any sense? So, there are a huge amount of issues that are here. I guess I'm only one person. I can only do so much. And that is the driving force behind why I came back. When there was a moment when I had a kid and there was a pandemic and I was like, am I ever going to do this ever again? And, this actually, the documentary brought me back. And making the documentary led to me relaunching the UPA. And it was a documentary first. And it was this passion to show the other side of it and to understand why for these people is it negative outcomes, and what can we learn from that? And how can we use that to move the narrative forward? And can we get some conversations with these people, and do they agree when I say, I think actually it's prohibition that's the problem here? Are they gonna say, yeah, absolutely, prohibition's the problem here, or are they gonna say, oh no, it was definitely just cannabis and only cannabis? Well, most of them understand there's a lot more to it. In fact, all of them understand there's a lot more to it than just cannabis. So yeah, it's totally yeah, it's very interesting and nuanced, but that's not lost to me whatsoever.
Yeah, so you
Oh, for
see,
sure.
we can all agree that there is just so much work to be still done, that it's not complete, that by making it medically legal doesn't mean it's the journey, the fight, whatever you want to call it, is done. I think there's still so much to be done, and we shall all be clear what is our role in it and what is our part. And I hope that I don't hope, I know that this film plays a very important part. And we confidently can say that. And we can't fix it all, we can't fix everything, but we just understand what is our part here. And Simpa, you play a very important part. And people listening to this, like, I feel that people who are really touched by this plant play their part in whichever capacity they can, and we shall educate ourselves and be clear what that role is and play it as much as we can, and come from a good place, ideally come from a place of like real passion and love, and sort of, yeah, like passion and love for the plant and for one another. And I sound like a hippie now, but I just sorry about that. but yeah, I just feel like this is kind of what I want to bring to this conversation now, a bit of that kind of like hippie dippy love, like let's hug. Let's get high.
It's what the legacy culture was, and in some ways is still trying to be. The issue
Let's not
is
forget, what the plant is doing to us. It makes us,
the plant binds us, but the profit motive divides us.
Yeah.
The fight very much may have allowed some advancements and opened some new doors, but it also welcomed in the biggest fucking enemy. Under prohibition, capitalism, the behemoth, the monolith isn't there. There is still a profit motive, don't get me wrong, but that's regulated by violence because of, as Neil Woods describes it, the arms race created under prohibition. Used to be Hippie Dave back in the day, walked down the street in all his gear, stinking. Everybody knew. You go, oh, you saw us a bit weird, here you go, bro, da da da. And he cared about the plant. He knew everything about the plant. So when the police came to crack down, he got taken first. The next guy went, I'll not wear the garb. I'll be spraying myself down. And then over time, it then became the police started infiltrating. So then it became, we need to smash people's faces in. Then it became about domination in global markets. And then it became about slush funds, look at Iran-Contra and stuff like that. So there's so much more to it in the profit motive in prohibition. Versus then when capitalism's there and you've got these huge venture firms. Look at the story that's recently just happened to Brewdog. Not Martin, the other guy. I wrote about this recently. I should be able to pull his name out my arse, and I can't. The other co-founder of Brewdog, the rebel punk micro brew company valued at several billion. That guy pulled out 20 million of his own capital, maybe some other money. We're not quite sure what's going on there, so I'll throw in some allegedly's here for my own legal protection. Then he invested into Waterside Pharmaceuticals, cannabis company. They've got a cultivation license and a building production up in Scotland. Cut 8 months later, Brewdog's in trouble. Brewdog goes bust. 200,000 equity punks lose $1 billion plus in investment money. Just gone. Who comes in to buy Brewdog, a drink company? Is that Tilray? Tilray, one of the largest cannabis companies in Canada. Yeah, that's important. But they're also the biggest brewery company in Colorado. They've been buying up the alcohol industry. What you're seeing is a convergence of interest. Look at what's happening now with smoke-free generation. There's no caveats on that. I'm arguing constantly with the Green Party that you need to caveat. I'm going to smoke weed to my dying day. You allow me to have the weed, but then say I can't smoke it. We're going to go to war. Like, there are big problems coming when you invite that thing in because what they can actually make. So Tilray have just swooped in, bought Brewdog for £44 million. £44 million? And they're immediately seeking a multi-billion valuation. What they're going to do, they're going to either pump and dump and tear it, or as they're saying that they're doing now, they're launching further into Australia. We're going to launch the brand into India, into Bangladesh, and into other Far Eastern regions. Like, where's the soul of that gone? Those 200,000 people that give a shit about microbrewery, that when this company rose from that culture, they're left shit out. Yet the multinational equity firm that owns Tilray, they're cashing in because they also own, like Coors, they own parts of Budweiser. I can't remember Budweiser's parent company off the top of my head, but do you know what I mean? The money is all the same, so there's a convergence of class interest. And what do we become at the bottom? Consumers. We're already seeing this in the limitations of the prescribing system of telemedicine. You click online, we chat like this for 5 minutes if you're lucky. That guy knows less than you about cannabis, most of the time if you've come from the cannabis culture, and they are basically prohibited to give you care because then they don't know how it works, and it's an off-label medication prescription, so it's not got the direct intervention. Their role is to go, follow the law, recommend that you vape it, here you go, how much do you want, come back when you want more. That's just a legal dealer. Like the system, it's not the care that we envisioned when we were outside of Parliament, Clark. Oh, you're muted, mate.
Maybe Robin Murray actually agree on something there then.
I finished my Weed World article. There's a point in that where I say that, I never thought I would agree with Robin Murray, but that him saying that the system has become drug dealers for the middle class is maybe the only thing I can kind of agree with there. But anything else he said, like, I tore him a shit somewhere else a bit later in the article as well. Earlier in the article. But yeah, it's not what we kind of fought for. We were talking about like self-identification. We were talking about like self-regulation. We wanted big supply. We were talking about that, but we were talking about how to ethically do that, how to do domestically, how to ensure that everybody got to their needs. Do you know what I mean? There was none of this idea of it'll only be vape. And it'll only be over this, and you can't actually go to your doctor, and your GP will still look at you funny, like as my GP commenting that I smell like cannabis, even though if I was prescribed a different substance, he wouldn't have even noted it. Do you know what I mean? There's still these issues that'll linger as a hangover, but these new issues that arise from it. And I think that the consumers, the patients, need to come back to the legacy culture, and the legacy culture needs to, and I'll speak as a representative of it, as it were, in this instance, to not feel so envious. And it is a hard thing to be vulnerable enough to recognize, and I say this as somebody with one foot in both sides, that it would be difficult. I wouldn't stop being who I am or doing what I'm doing, but I can imagine it being quite difficult if all of a sudden they went, you can smoke your prescription. Your prescription also entitles you to grow at home. The option to just, that's me. I could just get off. Do you know what I mean? And so I can understand why so many of the patients under the current system are like, but I like vaping and I do vape. And it's become, again, part of their identity in a way of going, well, look at me, I get to. And they're running around smelling of weed and stinking up and rolling up, not rolling up, like grinding up and preparing anywhere they are. And yes, that's good in some ways, and it can be good activism in a way for the thing, but if it's not contextualized, it can become binary. It creates more division. And the thing that I'm fearful at the minute is the amount of money, £298 million the British medical cannabis industrial complex made last year, where that money's going, what that's funding. And we're already seeing now even the advertising regulators and stuff starting to look at this and go, what's happening here? You guys doing promotions? Did you pay this person to do a sponsored video on Instagram? There's a lot of stuff going on there that, to go to your point of saying that we all want the same thing, I've heard that so much over the years, and some do. Some really, really do. They want freedom with the big F. They want it all. It's a cabbage. Leave me alone with my cabbage. I'm growing it in my allotment. I'm making coleslaw. I'm doing whatever the hell I want with it. That's the approach that they're looking for. And then there's the others that have come in, circled like vultures, and picked up the language and the rhetoric and understood certain things. And they're like, they'll pay lip service to certain things. Like, we're 8 years in. Where's the homegrown conversation? Like, if you want to talk about consistency, continuity of supply, Bob that we're talking about has got genetics that are like 9-year-old mothers. The same thing for 9 years has been going. I've met growers with 30+ year plants. Like, do you know what I mean? That they've bred out, that they've mothered. That's continuity. That's the same chemovar. Yeah, I now go to a clinic and you go, we're prescribing you, so we'll go with this. So you're like, they've opened it up a bit more now, but it used to be percentage of ratios. So you'd be fixed on 22%, 1%. So then you could get 22 to 1%. Now they've opened it up to cultivars and you get sort of a shopping list, as it were, which obviously is a lot better for the patient/consumer. The patient is in for the patient's access, and consumer side of it for the business, because they're going to make more sales. But then that cultivar's gone. Oh, we only had a small batch of it. Oh, we've got this similar one. We'll give you this instead. Or do you want to look at this instead? And you've just got this merry-go-round of people trying to find something that works for them. And like I've got a Master Banana Kush, my own sort of creation, that is the best thing in the world for me. I could be at any point of crisis within my mental health, and I can just go away, smoke a little bit of that, and I'm instantly just grounded. It's quiet. It's like I'm sat in the back of a church at midnight and there's no one around. There is just nothing, and I'm peaceful. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I've never found that on anything else. There's different varieties that do different things to me, obviously, same as anybody, because of the uniqueness of your endocannabinoid system. But to have access to that means there's only one way I can have access to that. Yeah. And that is not then, as Clark mentioned, if he was just prescribed that purple kush and he grew the purple kush. I mean, this is why we need that activism again, in that patients need to continue to take the risk. Not all of them, God, not all of you, that's not what I'm saying. But if you can, and you were part of the culture that moved the dial, and you are welcome to come back, do it. And if they take your doors off, don't plead guilty. Don't do what, and I know he did it under duress. This lad in Scotland pled guilty to effectively combustion, setting effectively precedent for, as we've already seen, where the police tried to prosecute a guy for not having his vaporizer, that if you don't have now your paid for profit medical device, you know, this whole industry, peripheral industry that's making tens of millions on top of, if not more globally, obviously, then you're at fault. So it's creating more, it's a cattle grid that, if you can dance it and you're good on your feet, you can get over it. But so many people are falling through those gaps, and we need those people to plead not guilty and to go into jury trials. So the jury sits there, and as Clark said before, they look at two bits of bud and go, oh, Your Honour, one of these is legal, one of them, oh, legal, I hate that parlance, but you know what I mean, one of these is lawful for me to possess, the other isn't, which is which? Do you know what I mean? And break down the nuances of it for your peers to recognise. And I think it's through the judiciary now of the persecution of patients. We need them to stand up. You have the rights. The Equality Act is a very firm, powerful piece of legislation in the UK. And any discrimination that you face for cannabis that is prescribed to you is discrimination arising from a disability. It is black and white. So push that shit. And because we live under this capitalist for-profit system, as soon as police, councils, housing associations start feeling pressure when you start taking them to court for discriminating against you, they'll very quickly start to write new policies, as we're seeing with, you know, venues, with transportation systems, etc. They're having to adjust this. But at the minute, they're only adjusting it for papers, please. If you smell cannabis, go up to them, make sure they've got the thing, get them to show you they're safe and they're a safe one. But if a bad one comes on, you know, the NPCC, the National Police Chief Council, have only just updated their guidance. But again, they've stated even within that there is no training to be given, that it is literally just treat them as patients first. But then how do you prove if someone is a patient or not? You force them to show them your papers. We don't have that for anything else, really. Like you can't, I mean, obviously the smell of cannabis is the problem here, in that you can't smell, you know, a Ritalin or whatever, you know what I mean? Which somebody without a prescription, you've got amphetamines. But for somebody with ADHD that's being treated with it, that's your medicine. That's no different than Tylenol, aspirin, paracetamol. Couldn't get the British term there. And so it's pushing that narrative forward, like you said. We've got the win in, so those people that can push that narrative forward. But I think there also needs to be some support from the back, because the complacency of those people that were formerly sort of cultural champions of all things cannabis are now cultural champions of all things, air quotes, medical cannabis, prescription cannabis, as I term it. And there is an insincerity, not necessarily in they're disingenuous, that's not what I'm saying, but they can't be truly sincere in what they're saying, knowing where they've come from. Do you know what I mean? Because every patient in the UK, actually, we can't even really say this maybe anymore, but it used to be that you would say every single patient that came to cannabis on prescription came from the being criminalized. But now actually there are some people that maybe have not tried cannabis that have seen some of these adverts and whatever else and have. Sure. So yeah, that maybe not nullifies, but reduces the potency of my point, maybe.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think you're bringing such an important point and argument into this, and thank you for that. And I don't know. I'm not educated and confident enough to suggest or confirm whether your way of fighting it is the right or wrong. This is not something I feel equipped to comment on. But it's clear that that cannabis industry is yet another industry that's been poisoned by the capitalistic mindset and sort of paradigm where it's not about what the community, what the world needs, is what the profit is and what is profitable and how we can increase it and make more money. And yeah, it's clear to me that there is a big sphere where that is happening, and the actual root has been completely suppressed and if not, deleted or... So it's clear to me, and I can see that, and I'm wondering if our film is tackling that. Well, we went to few expos and talked to cannabis businesses. I believe the ones that really care about cannabis and really care about the products, and they might be showing the sort of prototype of how to do it properly. We are not calling out or questioning the big guys, unfortunately, but we are aware that they're there, and again, cannabis is just another industry that fell victim of that. You know what I mean? That the capitalistic structures are poisoning everything, and I don't have, and maybe none of us have straightforward answer how to navigate it. And it might be a conversation or you know, the sort of solutions for that might be very individualistic and unique and sort of case to case. Maybe some people would say, let's abolish it completely and let's create new systems. Let's go back to communism. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely agree that is the case and that cannabis is a victim of that. And let's have more conversations about how sort of navigate that. And yeah, you're sort of suggesting to go again from the ground up and bring back those activists, bring back the revolution, bring back the sort of... Am I understanding you correctly? Is that what you're proposing? Yeah, and I think I love that.
Call for decentralization, effectively. I mean, because
yes.
The issue is that I think is very important for people to kind of understand of the difference between sort of cannabis and basically any other substance on the planet, right. Really, is the decentralization aspect to it, in that capitalist machine, whether it be to boost its 298 million profits, it's obviously created systems like GMP that we talk about being, you know, for patient But what it also does is it creates limited sections through licensing, and so that only some people can cultivate it. That means there's only ever so much of an amount. That means you can price fix the market. You know, we've seen this time and time again over the decades in the UK with things like milk. You hear about it with like the chocolate cartels and shit like that. You know what I mean? But all of those patients, or with most of them, obviously mobility issues, etc., but with assistance, could grow their own cannabis, could become self-sufficient, or could be part of a small collective like they did in America for many years in different states, have these decentralized hubs. But what the system has done is gone, okay, we'll give you what you want, but it has to run through our system. So we now own the logistics, that's making us money every time we post it to you. We own these telehub marketing systems, these AI things, so that makes us money when you do it. Then there's the clinics, the prescribing doctor, there's you need the device, you need and so they're maximizing and getting all that money out of you. But no, they're never going to give you the thing that means they'll make less money. That's just never, ever, ever going to happen. So any of these companies that are growing to be multinational, by the nature of how cannabis law and everything else works, frankly, they're willing to bend their morals to work wherever they can. They're just trying to gain a footing of, well, no, we'll go over here and be wrecked. I mean, look at what Tilray is doing. Do you really think they give a shit about Brewdog? No, they just want to own a British asset so that they can start to move that money in and that influence in, so we can have more Canadian products in. It ends up interwoven into itself, and this is why I think in so many different ways, like we said, cannabis is the linchpin, whether it be for the end of the prohibition of all currently criminalized substances, whether it be sort of these conversations about community self-sufficiency, with the allotment era, the allotment generation, post Second World War, and the government gave these huge spaces. Currently, loads of councils are selling off those little allotments, turning them into high-rise flats and shit with no gardens. So we're losing all of these green spaces, these potentials for 12 people to come together and grow a winter's worth of veg for their families. But then you're still going to Tesco, or you're going to Asda, or you're going to whatever. There's just this creep that happens, and the people that are attached to cannabis and they've cultivated it for a long time, they're never really going to give it up. You can get down to a couple of quid grams, and maybe I'll buy a bit of yours. But what they have is that relationship to the plant, that from seed to then drying, and that first grind, that feeling of connection to nature, that feeling of belonging with the life cycle of things. Like, that's part of the healing, to be able to then have the autonomy of your healthcare. To me, I hate the idea of then, and look, I've been lucky with a lot of the prescribers. I can be honest. I ask them, like, how honest can I be with you here? Can I really tell you the fucking truth, or am I gonna have to lie with you, and we'll do some shit, and we'll do the dance, and you'll give me what I want at the end of it anyway because you want your money? Like, to just be honest with it, to just be able to say, like, this is what my relationship is to cannabis, and this is what I find works, and to then have to hide your knowledge and your experience so that you can get access to what you want. Most of us know that back from the legacy days of going to the dodgy dealer, like in a high-rise flats or whatever, and you have to hang out there for half an hour. He's like, dude, you can't just come in and go. You got to sit down, and you'd have to be involved in his shit for half an hour, and his life and his crack. Like, it feels the same thing. You're a hostage to the whims of somebody else when the access could be so opened that then all of these people that have the passion for cannabis, but because they didn't go to school with somebody in a private educator, as we call them, public schools in the UK, then they're not going to get the cultivation job. They're not going to get access to that industry that's booming and making millions. So what do? They either move to a different region around the world to practice their skill lawfully, or they move into the other market, where as a consequence of the eroding effect of prohibition, they become more disenfranchised with the system. Like, my whole project of Velvet Green, the point of that is it's a cannabis garden. Weed grows there, people go there to consume cannabis. We have large-scale cannabis events there. But the rest of the time, it's an open public park and community garden maintained by cannabis volunteers. Like, we need reintegration. I don't just want this bubble of I'm safe me. Like, I want it to not be a thing. In the same way that if I had a headache this morning and I went and took, can you tell them these pills, whatever we take, like, again, paracetamol or what do you call them? Ibuprofen or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's nobody's business. It should be exactly the same goddamn thing. It's just, if you need it, you do it. It doesn't then need to have kind of the cultural connotations per se to it.
Yeah.
Cannabis can, but if we then put that into or behind the security of the paywall of a prescription, it unintentionally creates this artificial division that is become, I think, the reason we've seen stagnation in so-called adult use or so-called recreational activism. And I'm hoping that enough patients are kind of disenfranchised with the system or can understand that, wait a minute, the best thing for me, I'm speaking about an imaginary person here, is to get enough of a prescription to keep it kind of going. I can then use the pot to put my product in or whatever. They've found out how to navigate the system to protect, their housing agent. They've shown it to them, so they got one prescription one time, and so the housing agent will never bother them again or whatever. Versus then the people who have no access to cannabis whatsoever would never consider growing it, and that is their only access point. Like, there's obviously the spectrum of people, but at the minute, like I said, that system is almost like criminal, devil, criminal. Here you go, customer. What would you like, sir? Oh, brilliant. Yeah, we can start you on 30 grams. Actually, we go before. Like, that element, and as we described before, that as Clark agreed with that kind of guilt, that shame of like, but I guess why me in a way, and the why you is the money, but it hurts. And I think until we can rationally have this conversation and reconnect with the so-called rec movement, which I don't think should be a medical, the consumption and the usage shouldn't be involved in the conversation. The conversation is access to the plant. What you choose to do with it is up to you.
So it's the prohibition, right? That's the what you're proposing, that is the key problem and key enemy. Am I right?
Yeah.
And so without spoiling anything, and again, it's so tricky to actually even talk about these things because we are just entering the editing stage. okay, I might spoil it. Okay, let's just spoil it. I feel from what we've collected so far, and again, this is before we actually opened those editing softwares and started creating the narrative. It seems to me, and it's been increasingly clear, that this is where the series now is going to end. That we explore these different positive, negative addictions, psychosis, these different sort of diagnoses that benefit from cannabis use, like these different patients with their stories. And, you know, talking to scientists and professionals and ex-police officers and blah, 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 like just like bringing all these different things together. Where we are all going to arrive, it seems, is prohibition, and it's sort of legalizing this plant and showing how that can reduce all these different, well, negative components of that plant. That often is the prohibition that it's actually at the root of it. And it's so cool to sort of arrive here with you as well. And that, again, another proof that we are fighting for the same thing. And we can be doing it on different fronts. We might arrive at the same argument. Maybe not the people who want to profit from it, because I guess legalization would mean less business for them. But that's not us, and we shall sort of, you know, arrive here together, like arrive at this point, at this argument. And yeah, I'm sensing that this is where that edit is gonna go. This is where it's gonna end up being, and we just have to. Well, I don't know if the film will have the capacity to do that, but this itself opens another conversation, how we're going to do it and how it should be done in the UK. Because we can, you know, travel the world and see different examples of how that's been done across, you know, across the Europe or across, you know, we're even going to US, to the America. And we can see that there are different ways to do that. And we can see that might not be, those methods might not be completely applicable to the UK. So, you know what I mean? I think it opens another conversation. And I don't know if you want to go there. Maybe we don't have the time to do that today. But yeah, I feel that that's the way too.
That's good to know there is then that consensus. I'll fire a few sort of quick short questions and then we'll sort of wrap up. So you mentioned before fundraising, so I'm guessing that's sort of tied to I'll ask you all three questions together, I guess. So talk to us about fundraising. Sort of when are you aiming for release, and will you be doing sort of I was going to say I'll put down your premiere, but I guess if it's a series, you don't really do a film premiere in the same way, do you? Or do you?
Well, we still. It's a good question, do you? We don't know. We shall find out. I think we still going to decide what will be the exact way to release it. You know, you can do it in different ways. You can release one episode and then another episode next week and another episode next week, or you can release them all at the same time. You can use YouTube for that. You can use, you know, big media streaming platforms for that. So this is something we're still figuring out, and I think the outcome of the Kickstarter will be a big factor in determining that. You know, it's the crowdfunder itself is for that very thing. It's for the post-production, which is, you know, the editing itself and the distribution. And we are aiming high. We want to go as high as possible, pun intended. But you know, it's an independent production, so it's unclear what is the destiny of this project. But yeah, we're going to aim as high as possible, and I think the most important thing for us is to just get it out and get it to people and make it available and accessible to everybody, because there is a lot of valuable information that shall be shared with the world. And I think that is our main goal, not to make money from it, but to just spread it as wide and as far as possible. Clark, feel free to add anything to that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely not a money-making project. It's a passion project. It's cost quite a lot of money to make so far. And we're lucky that Stores and Bickle helped us out with the initial funding to get everything going. And I think we've done a good job of using that to the best that we could to shoot and, make a, couple of years, how many years now? 4 years worth of footage where we've gone to loads of different places across the world. We've really focused in on the good, the bad, and everything in between. And I think we've got a really broad picture of what's going on, with a lot of nuance, and that, and we can show that with our characters, with the people that have chosen to be part of the documentary. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I really hope that everybody agrees that this is something that they want to see out there, and that they think could make a difference to the world. And ultimately, I would like something where somebody can go, hey, mum, dad, nan, uncle, auntie, whoever, that thing that we both thought was really controversial and we fell on opposite sides. Why don't we watch this together? And, why don't we try and understand it further? And, I'm fed up of cannabis dividing people. I'm fed up of families not talking to each other because they disagree about this thing. And I just want this project to, I just hope that this project can bring some of those people that have fought over it, have very different opinions, and who really believe passionately that they are correct. And, they've fallen out because of it. Hopefully this will bring them together to understand it better and to, realize actually it isn't us versus them. It isn't, let's not wheel out the MS patients versus the schizophrenia patients. Like, that's not what it's about. It's actually a lot more nuanced. It's very deep. It's very vast. The whole prohibition thing is makes such a difference on so many different levels. To try and tackle the subject, we've had to really kind of go, okay, what is it that we're talking about here? What is it that this documentary is going to be about? Whether it's a film or a series, what is it about? Mm-hmm. And we've really had to kind of, cut out a lot of the very interesting subjects that are very relevant and next to it, to just try and focus on, okay, how is it good for these people? Why is it good for them? How does it help them? Why is it bad for these people? How did they access it? What did it do to their lives? How did they recover? And what do these two groups actually agree on? And we've got so much great footage of people in agreement that you would have thought would have been on opposite sides of a quite a quite passionate argument on both sides.
Mm.
No, that's a great point, Clark. Thank you for bringing that up. There's so much to talk about, right? There's so much to say and to discuss, and you as a podcaster, you probably completely understand that, Simpa, right? Like, you can go on and on and on. Like, you can go on for hours.
My audience will attest to that.
Right? Yeah, I don't know even. I'm sure. Yeah, please comment below. But yeah, exactly, right. And so with documentary filming, that's one of the most difficult things about it. Like, so what is the narrative? Like, what is the structure? What is the direction we're going? And we've been accumulating so many different things. And I think we're still not completely clear what the structure will look like. I mean, we have an idea, we have plans, and we having these conversations constantly. We're figuring that out, but it's just so difficult. And to make a good film, or to make a good series, sorry, I keep forgetting, but yeah, to sort of achieve the thing we sign up for, there has to be kind of a clear direction, and yeah, Clark kind of summarized it perfectly. We're focusing on both sides of high THC cannabis, and there is a lot in between that we are inserting, like it's the sort of business elements, the medical cannabis industry elements, the prohibition elements, and so much more. Like, there are so many themes we are uncovering, but we have to stay on that sort of journey, right? Like we have to stay on our path of actually exploring the duality, and that's, I think, the main thing: polarity and duality of this plant. And I really hope we will, achieve that and make a little difference in the discourse. Yeah.
I think to Clark's point, your early on decision to kind of go for a more neutrality and objectivity, and keeping it within the remit of skunk being the loaded term that it is. I mean, one of the questions I forgot to ask earlier, obviously in the UK, especially in the culture, we kind of tend to view skunk as a pejorative term, in the same way the Americans, a lot of the more progressive people within the cannabis space view marijuana as a pejorative, in a sort of transgressive term, as it were. Do you identify in the documentary where sort of skunk came from, or where most people sort of believe it to come from, being the skunk #1 GW and sort of media campaigns around that? Is that sort of actively addressed within the series?
Clark, you want to answer that?
You want me to take that? Yeah, I think it absolutely is addressed on multiple levels on multiple different interviews, and with some people that you wouldn't have expected to address it as well. And certainly by trying to uncover that and by pointing to that in certain uncomfortable situations, we've uncovered things that will shock the audience to learn around mental health, around prescription cannabis, around I'm not going to give the game away here because I'll save it for the documentary. But there's some truths that are uncovered that both sides of the audience are going to go, they do what? Mm-hmm. So we have not been afraid to ask those difficult questions in those spaces, but we also had to tone it down a bit so we could get in, so that we could ask them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where she's gone yet, but we had to that's why the madness had to go, essentially. And once it did, we were listened to a lot easier by the people that have had those negative experiences. And I think if we hadn't included the people themselves that have had those negative experiences, we wouldn't have been making the documentary. And it's kind of the point of that's why I wanted to call the documentary Skunk. That's why it is called that, is because it's kind of trying to take the term and use it to educate. Okay, well, it's a term that is really divisive and really, most people have got the wrong idea when it comes to it. And that even within the cannabis community, it's controversial, and where is it? Where did it come from, etc. But yeah, we go into that definitely with quite a few of the interviewees, and Michaela's back, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely touched on it. It wasn't necessarily one of the main narratives, if that makes sense, but it's certainly a part of quite a lot of the interviews, and I'm sure we'll make the final edit because it is an important point to make, isn't it? So yeah, I'm not sure what person will choose to reveal that, but we've got quite a few different people talking about that in particular. Yeah.
I mean, not to suggest any more filming, but Kevin Jones has been delving very, very deep, sort of around skunk and whatnot. I just thought it would be important to kind of clarify early on in the series, possibly the first episode, kind of where skunk comes from, and to give kind of the different interpretations culturally, industrially, that's not what I mean, but from the industry, as it were, the politicized use of it, the media interpretation of it, etc. So that because if you are aiming for this audience that I believe you will capture, if the way that you've stated that you've kind of put it together, or you will be putting it together through editing and post-production, that it will attract a wider demographic, and for them to not then be like, oh, everyone just calls all high THC skunk, and do you know what I mean? And it misrepresent kind of the nature of the term. So I'm glad that quite a few different people have kind of brought that up. And yeah, I think that does inform or give an insight into kind of the binaries that can arise as a consequence of linguistics. So I'm glad that's included.
We sort of agreed with Clark that we're going to ask that question on every single interview. Like, whoever you are, we're just going to test you. I don't know, maybe you mentioned it, Clark, but yeah, that was so interesting to see what people think that term means. And obviously, I wasn't born here. I don't understand the connotation, but it's been really interesting to see what a bad rap that word has. And that's why I love that we kept the name skunk. So the madness is not that, important, but the skunk, that's the thing, because it will make people feel different things. And I think that's why it's just so simply powerful, and it's enough to attract people's attention and want to understand what are we actually talking about then. And yeah, stay tuned.
No, excellent. You guys are definitely, I was interested anyway, but I'm definitely ever more interested. Now you've led some breadcrumbs there that I'm going to very much follow. So I suppose to surmise and wrap this up, where can people keep up to date with kind of the production and what you guys are up to? Where will they be able to access the fundraiser? When is that launching? I think good final questions.
Yeah, logistical. Clark, do you want to answer those? No, he doesn't know. I'm joking. We know. Okay, so when is it going to launch? We're hoping to launch it on the 1st of May. So that's very soon. And if you follow our social media, so Skunk Docu-Series, it's the name, and this is how you can find us everywhere. You'll have, I guess, the most recent updates, and we'll be posting highlights from this podcast. We have lots of content to come out to sort of promote this. And so the Kickstarter itself will be going for 2 months. So if you follow us, you'll know you'll know where to go. We'll be sharing lots and lots and lots of content and links and videos. Is your cat there?
He's looking a bit apprehensive. I don't know whether he's going to try and jump up or not.
Oh my God, come in, join us. And well, we are lucky to be able to sort of collaborate with the UPA, although we haven't spoken about it much, but we are using the YouTube channel. Hello. Thank you so much for coming. Beautiful cat. And so anyway, just to finish this great time, great moment to arrive. We're gonna be using the UPA YouTube channel to post these videos, so you can expect a lot of statements from the crew. So from me, Clark, and assistant editors, assistant camera people. And some participants actually. So there's going to be a lot of content coming across the UPA channel and our Instagram, and yeah, the link will be all there. We'll be using the crowdfunder platform for the crowdfunder, and so yeah, just follow us on our social media. I guess that's the way to go. And yeah, it's coming soon, 1st of May. Yes. We're ready.
Perfect. I will, share links on the Simpa Life socials when the fundraiser launches as well. I've got a kind of a humorous question here. I suppose we could finish on here. I saw on your socials the other day, Clark, you're back making music. Are you going to be providing some tunes for the series?
Ooh.
Or is your genre of music a bit too heavy for the series?
Well, yes. That is not something that I had planned on talking about yet, but there is going to be so the person who I make my music with has recently joined the crew for the documentary, and will be doing the score for the documentary. So there will be parts where some of the music that I have been making for myself, for my own personal happiness, will be able to be used in the documentary. But there's a few places it's used in some of the Kickstarter videos and stuff as well, because it is very heavy for the most part, but there are parts of it that are more acceptable to most ears. And so we've used some of those parts within it. It's true. But that was kind of more of okay, that'll be cool. And it's like, let's use the music that I have the rights to. And then we can not pay for somebody else's music. So it kind of works for the project as well, to have a little bit of music in the background to be able to be used. So yeah, a bit of cross-pollination there.
Nice. Excellent. All right, I think this young chap wants some food and some attention. So yeah, let's wrap up. It has been a pleasure, guys. Thank you for taking the time. I'll include some links below for people to catch up on your socials. And as I said, I'll give the fundraiser a share when it launches. So yeah, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the space to talk about this film. And yeah, you're amazing interviewer. Thank you. Thank you for the space.
Thank you. Appreciate it. No worries. Anytime. All right, take it easy, guys.
Take care.
Yeah, we're releasing this on 420, so I'll tag you in it.
420.
Yay! Happy 420!
See you later. Happy 420, guys. Yo, well, there you go. Quiet. Yo, well, there you go, folks. That was Clark French and Michaela Maselkova from the Skunk Documentary series. So yeah, I said some of my information incorrect there. Last time I'd heard on the project, it was Skunk Madness Documentary, as in a documentary film, standalone piece. Interesting to hear about the process and kind of how it's broken down and the evolution of it over the years as to what they've put together in the narrative that they're kind of creating. I think the attempt at objectivity and a bit of neutrality, as we kind of discussed and touched on, I think is very important to reaching normies. You know, a lot of us we are the evangelicalists. We are the singing to the choir. We already know these hymns. We are well versed in our culture, but there's only so much we can do unless we find ways to bridge that divide, to connect with these other people and share that information in a way that's useful to them. You know, it's no use as proselytizing, sort of like just shouting down on these people with a vigor and a certainty and a righteousness that just turns off a lot of people, especially sort of Clark was describing people that are already kind of anti-cannabis, already have a prohibitionist sort of attitude, or may have even a real negative connotation towards cannabis because of, you know, family members suffering with various issues, as we touched on. So I'm hoping that through the editing process they can weave that narrative, and by the end of it, as we kind of discussed there, come to the conclusion that we do almost every week on this podcast, that prohibition is the problem here. That the attempts to criminalize and to demonize the behaviors of, you know, millions upon millions of people is only ever going to result in problems. It's like if we suddenly criminalized coffee tomorrow. I think my own mother would be out on the street scoring coffee beans. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the substance. It's society, and these conversations, hopefully, in some which way, can help, you know, inform decision making in the process, so that we can widen access, so that there isn't this artificial divide between the prescribed and the non-prescribed, between the legacy culture and the sort of new culture of cannabis that we have. My notes page is a wee bit of a mess. Somewhere in that jumbled mix is social media links and various things that I will include below for your fine people's edification and in informing you and keeping up to date with the release schedule of the Skunk Docu-Series, and their fundraiser, which we will be sharing on the Simpa Life channels below. I'll be getting Clark back on in the not too distant future to discuss UPA, kind of what's going on with that, their future trajectory, their position, stance, have a bit more of an in-depth look into what I term obviously the medical cannabis industrial complex, and really just delve into it. Hopefully I'm going to reach out and see if we can get contact with Robin Murray, because that would be incredible conversation, to be honest with you. I've sent various emails to various prohibitionists over the years and never really heard anything back from them. So if I can get an introduction there, that could be good. Yeah, that's about all the housekeeping I've got. I'll keep you guys informed more on Albert Green, maybe do a bit of a debrief on 420 with our next guest, who will be... I nearly did my whole thing and ended the podcast there. I haven't even done my whole fucking spiel. So if you enjoyed this, folks, please do give us a like, a share, a subscribe, a thumbs up, a heart, whatever it is on whatever platform you're enjoying this. It shows your appreciation. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Check out thesimplelife.com for back catalogue of articles and sort of blogs and things like that about various subjects, majority of which cannabis and drugs. Obviously, you guys know me. Check us out on Simpa Life, at the Simpa Life on all social media. I'll say all social media. That's Instagram and Facebook, because I don't really fucks with many of these other things. Yeah, anyway, if you really enjoyed this, check us out on patreon.com/the Simpa Life, where for less than a cup of coffee a week, you can help me keep the lights on this little project of mine. All right, you be beautiful to each other. You go enjoy that sunshine. Have a wonderful 420. Happy 420. It is 420 today. I will be somewhere very high, enjoying myself, so I hope you are doing the same. All right, folks, we'll be back next week with, I don't know, somebody. It'll be awesome. You'll love it, and so will I. All right, peace and love.